welcome to Procurement Pivots, the podcast for procurement professionals wanting to navigate change successfully and create career success on your own terms. I'm Donna Bowden, procurement career coach and founder of Narrate Your Career.
And I'm Laura Sellers, executive coach for procurement and founder of Coaching for Procurement. And between us, we bring almost 25 years of supporting and working with procurement professionals. And it's fair to say we've navigated many of our own career pivots along the way. And now we're here to help you do the same.
Each episode will share practical strategies, honest conversations, and expert insights to help you confidently tackle the changes and challenges in your procurement career.
Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode on the Procurement Pivots podcast. How are you doing today, Laura?
Yep, all good. Thank you, Donna. Donna, busy, all good.
Good. So today, everyone, we thought we would share some of our kind of insight in what we see as one of the biggest traits actually that we see across some of the most successful procurement leaders that we know, that we support, and that is that, you know, most of them are very strong around their own self-awareness. So today's episode is going to be exploring and celebrating self-awareness, particularly from the lens as a procurement leader.
Yeah, it's a great topic. It's a topic that I am very close to myself personally. It's something that I really like to explore for myself and with others. But I think, something to sort of bring this into context, because it feels like quite a lofty topic. When we've talked about purpose before, like find your purpose, it feels like so big. And I think self-awareness is the same. So just to throw a stat out there, which I think I've shared before, is 95% of us believe we're self-aware. And apparently only 10 to 15% of us actually fit the criteria for self-awareness. And for me, that actually means that we're all on a level playing field, really, and that it is achievable. It is achievable to work on your self-awareness, but it's not a thing that you have it and somebody else doesn't, and this is what it looks like, because it's one of those unique things, like our own self-awareness. We're all unique, like fingerprints, they're all different. So, and that stat, by the way, comes from Tasha Eurich, I think is how you say her name. But if you look her up, you'll see that stat and that research that she's done. So, and I think the reason why it's important for procurement careers and for procurement leaders especially, like you say, some of the top traits and certainly something that we've seen from really high performing procurement leaders and teams, in my perspective, is that they do have this level of a commitment to self-awareness and to learning about themselves and about others. So it's not just about them having self-awareness, it's because it's the fact that they're committed to it.
Yeah. I love that, the kind of the learning piece. And this is something that it's having that consistency around it as well, isn't it? And I think the thing is, like, there's so many different areas of how you kind of interact with all these different people across the organisation. Like, actually, probably no one is ever going to be fully self-aware in all of those areas. This is the thing. It's like, I think there's always something more to learn about yourself and your approach and how you can evolve. And yeah, I mean, I think, in a lot of the work that I do with individuals, which essentially people are typically coming to me because they want more in some shape or form. They maybe want to progress, they want to grow in their career, maybe they want to change organisation. But so much of that early work that we do is around kind of facilitating some of their self-reflection, self-understanding, self-awareness in different areas, and so that clarity piece, understanding, like, actually it's always such a positive start point before you start trying to think about driving change, driving improvement, growing, progressing. Actually taking that time to really understand kind of, where am I right now? Where do I stand right now?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it's a journey. This is not a switch on and off thing. It will come and go in waves, and the more you learn about yourself, the more you think, oh, there's more to learn. Like, it's like peeling back the layers of an onion, as I had it described to me. But just to also think about why it's important to do this work in procurement, because of all of the multiple hats that procurement have to wear, because of all the spinning plates, and because of all the multiple touch points with stakeholders across the business. So we're talking about things like understanding your own reactions and therefore being able to choose responses when you're faced with tough times. We're talking about empathy, we're talking about adaptability, we're talking about self-regulation, decision making, all these soft skills, which is why, like, when we talk about soft skills, for me it's like, well, they're not soft because they're actually quite hard to master. And again, it's not they have them or they don't have them. It is something that is uniquely yours. And I think you need to sort of take that time to think about, well, where do I need to start, like you say?
Yeah.
And for me, it always starts with, well, what are my current, like, most natural traits or communication? Like, how am I when I'm relaxed? How am I when I'm performing? Like, recognizing, and success leaves clues, our behavior leaves clues, because there's patterns in our behavior all the time. And it's the link between our thoughts, our feelings, and our responses and our behaviors.
Yeah, I mean, I'd add a few, like, I mean, the list is actually endless, isn't it, of the different areas that you could potentially be kind of self-aware about. I'll add a few additional ones to the mix, and actually they're so important. They've had standalone episodes on the Procurement Pivots podcast before, but you know, in the work I do, I think one of the really key things to be really aware of, allow yourself to recognise is your own strengths. And I call this one out because I cannot tell you like how many amazing, successful procurement leaders I meet that really struggle, firstly, to be able to articulate some of their own strengths, and sometimes those things that they're absolutely brilliant at, because they're so good at it, they just think it's so normal and everyone does that. They don't realise that that is like their unique way of doing that thing is so very different and more successful than maybe other ways. And so I call that one out because also I think we've got this inherent problem right now in procurement where so many functions feel like they're not understood, and so many individuals in procurement feel like their value is not recognised. And I think for me it does also link into, but are you recognising some of that stuff for yourself? Because actually then are you allowing yourself to recognise it? And then when you do recognise it, how and when do you actually articulate it to help educate those people and help them to understand? But if it doesn't start with you, your own self-awareness, how can you even ever expect those other people, often that don't even work in procurement, to understand? So I think, like, for me, strengths was definitely one to call out. I think go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, it always starts with self. Like, there's such a great point there. You know, you can't expect others. You've got, because everyone's got their own self-awareness journey, and some people will never go on it. So you need to sort of, it always needs to start with self. But sorry, I interrupted you.
No. I think, like, also it's like then the flip side of you know, the kind of strengths is like, actually, what is your level of awareness around your areas for development? Probably that are then linked to actually either what you're doing right now or what you hope to be doing in the future, because we're all going to have loads of areas for development, but what's the point in focusing on stuff that actually doesn't interest you or isn't aligned to what you're hoping to do moving forward? So I think it's like just recognizing for that future journey that you want for yourself, you know, what might help support you to get there quicker, faster, more successfully. And then I think, like, impact, we did a whole episode on, but I think this is your impact, being aware of your own impact ties into kind of similar in a way to the strengths. But if you want people to understand your impact, you need to understand your own impact first. You need to understand it, and you need to be able to demonstrate it almost in a measurable way, because that will enable people to really understand it. So, yeah, I think just becoming clear of that yourself. And again, many amazing, successful procurement professionals at senior levels they really struggle with this. They struggle to see it, they struggle to articulate it. So again, I think there are a couple of, but there's so many areas: behaviours, your communication in different scenarios as well. You know, your written, your spoken, in meetings, online. Like, I just think there's so many areas, and that feels quite overwhelming, doesn't it? Even when we just start talking about this.
It is overwhelming, and I think this is why some people think, well, what's the point? And also, what's it going to get me? Yeah, okay, I
Yeah,
become more aware, but it's not going to change anything around and about other people that I'm trying to influence or have better
yeah,
relationships with. But I disagree on this massively, like, because, you know, having been through this journey of self-awareness myself, you know, like when you learn to coach, you know, you're a more effective coach the more that you understand yourself and your own
yeah,
reactions, and to remain objective, and you can be more curious about others. And you also learn things like to take things less personally. You also learn your boundaries. You also learn where your people pleasing might be appearing and where it isn't, because you've worked on that
yeah,
self-awareness. And so when you do this work on yourself, and again, some people might not need to work on people pleasing, you know, but some
yeah,
people will. But when you work on these things, you start to see your relationships with others in a different light. You start to recognize, and it's something I always come back to with my clients. I always say, is it theirs or is it yours? Because sometimes we take on other people's emotions that are not ours, and we think they're ours because we might get given some feedback or get told. Doesn't mean that feedback's not valid. Doesn't mean that somebody can't tell us something and it isn't true
yeah,
about ourselves, but it's being able to create some space.
yeah,
It's all about, and I'm not just talking about reflection here, like the more self-awareness work that you do, you're able to put more of a gap between your immediate reaction to something and your
yeah,
chosen response. And that's what we're looking to achieve a lot of the time, because that then gives you a clearer head when you go into negotiations.
yeah,
It gives you a clearer head when you're trying to overcome a really tricky stakeholder relationship. We spoke about line manager relationships in the last episode, and talking about how if once we have that greater sense of self-awareness, we're able to hold ourselves
yeah,
in a different way. We're allowed to show up into rooms more confidently, more
yeah.
with a greater sense of self. So no self-awareness work is a wasted effort.
No,
And even though it can feel really overwhelming, don't think of it as one thing. You've got to break it down into different things. So Daniel Goleman's a great thought leader on this. He's done loads of things. So he talks about different areas of self-awareness, like the social awareness of it all, and the self-regulation, the empathy. I've actually got some things here like the adaptability, how to regulate yourself, how to influence, because that self-awareness is a solid foundation for the multiple skill sets that are now
yeah.
expected of a procurement professional.
Yeah. And I think, like you just mentioned, that kind of social piece, I think this isn't then just about the self-awareness. I think it's then also how can you bring in that kind of feedback from others as well to support your own thinking and to help evolve and shape your own thinking about yourself, and almost to, I guess, validate and confirm, like, actually, you know, how I am seeing myself is or isn't, you know, how others are, you know, are also kind of experiencing me.
Yes. Yeah, and it is important to get that feedback right, because also, again, in terms of strengths, like you mentioned earlier, people might see things in ourselves that we don't see because it comes so
Totally.
naturally. So
Yeah.
it's important to get that calibration,
Mm.
and get that feedback. So it might be that you do 360s in the workplace, and obviously you might get good feedback. If you're not getting it, ask some great questions of the people who know you well. Like, how am I when I'm at my best? What makes you enjoy working about me? You know, where do you think I could build upon these things? So these are great examples, you know, and obviously psychometric testing can also give you insights into yourself that you might not have been aware of either.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And we
some
did
really,
also do a couple of episodes simply fairly recently on
yeah,
both receiving feedback and then giving feedback to others. And, you know, this can really help to support your own learning journey about yourself and how you can keep growing and keep progressing and keep building in your career.
yes. Yeah. So if we bring this back to what we were saying about top traits of highly performing procurement leaders and successful ones, you know, like if you were to think about scenarios in the workplace where you've witnessed that, you know, from the work that you've done, what would you say? How do they best apply their self-awareness?
Ooh, what a great question. I think I think many of them, you know, they have given themselves some space at points to understand themselves better. And I think a lot of them actually are. So I'm pausing because I'm actually thinking of some of the people that I'm kind of, I'm thinking of. But I think they will give themselves, like, I guess, just some space to think intentionally about how they're approaching different situations. So it's not always um, totally reactive. It's kind of like just actually, just being. I think it's like just being more considered around how they are how they are showing up, how they are asking questions, how they adapt their own style for different types of people that they're working with. And I think ultimately that additional kind of consideration, if you like, it leads to better relationships, often quicker. It leads to greater credibility. It leads to more influence, and more influence is going to result in the impact. So I think it's just, you know, I think a lot of those people that are self-aware, they've somehow created the environment in their life to be able to take time to take stock and think about this stuff and adapt it. Like, it's, and they're really busy people, so this is not saying that they're not busy and they're not the types of people that are bouncing from one meeting to another, as many people are. But I think, you know at points they are checking in with themselves, and they are doing some form of self-assessment, in particular areas, not necessarily assessing everything all the time, but they're just they're kind of, they're learning as well. I think a lot of those individuals, they are kind of growth mindset individuals. They want to keep learning more about themselves, and so they might be investing in training, professional development, personal development, coaching, mentorship. I think in order to keep extracting more and more learning about themselves that they can then keep applying to build better relationships and get better results in through those relationships. And I think so much of this is tied to relationships. So much of it. I think, like, those that are succeeding consistently across their career in senior procurement careers, like, so much of that success, I think they often will attribute to their ability to build really successful, open, trusted relationships with the right types of people.
Yeah, I think I think you've raised some great points there. I think consistency, if I was to name it in one word with self-aware procurement leaders, it's the consistency that they recognize the progress that they make with this, right?
Mm,
So when it comes to the relationships, like, and being resilient, the resilience that
yeah,
you need as a procurement leader is huge,
yeah,
with all of the external factors in the world that impact on a procurement professional's job. And I think that consistency of going, and I've seen it in my client base where they've taken a really tricky relationship and turned it around over time, or where they've built the profile of procurement over time. Like, I sometimes
yeah,
have to remind them about how far they've come. And then they
yeah,
go, oh, yeah. And then it's around, so, we've talked about like the success bank of feedback
yeah,
that we might have had,
yeah,
that we encourage you to keep in your own career. But looking about how all of a sudden they've been invited into the room because they've stayed consistent. They've
yeah,
recognized that it doesn't just happen overnight where they build
yeah,
those relationships.
yeah,
And I think I would say as well, one other thing about with self-awareness, like, the more you do learn about yourself, like, it it's sometimes they're huge light bulb moments, and other times it's like, yeah, okay, no, I know that they recognize a pattern that
yeah.
they can then change or have the responsibility and
Mm,
accountability to change. And it you know, it does make it easier to have someone to partner with to go through that journey. There's a reason why coaching relationships don't just, you know, I never sell one-off coaching sessions to anybody, because I'm just like, unless it's a past client who needs like a, you know, a bit of a check-in. But like, I think it's just like having somebody, whether it is a coach, whether it's a mentor, whoever it is, to be able to partner with you, to encourage you, and to help you see things differently as you go through this journey. Because,
and I think, sorry, no, carry on.
No, just saying it. It's not something that you go, oh, okay, I'm going to be self-aware. Bam.
Yeah. Ta-da! Well done, me.
Yeah.
I am there. But I think something you just said in there, I just think is really important to call out, because you know, we are supporting our clients to become more self-aware, and often off the back of that, some very big career decisions are made off the back of that discovery that wasn't there. And actually, you know, so many of my clients, they come to me because they want change. And I think they probably think we're going to start with the CV and the LinkedIn and the interview coaching, but we start with this self-awareness, self-reflection piece, to understand yourself much better and what's important and what you love, and you know what those deal breakers are, the boundaries, etc. And that's where people often get their clues and their answers about what they are most excited about doing next. And I've seen it like so many times, and actually even at the moment, like there's multiple senior clients that I'm working with at the moment who came to me with one view of what they wanted. So there's a few of them that I think they just thought their next move was either going to be into a CPO role or into another CPO role, permanent. And actually through doing this work, they've realised that that isn't the path that they want anymore. It doesn't, they can do it, doesn't light them up. And so they're following a really different path. You know, a couple of them at the moment are now setting up their own businesses off the back of discovering, like, which parts of what I do I most love. And so I think actually, like, having the confidence to stand behind some bold career decisions comes from that understanding of yourself. Like, because otherwise it's like, oh, do I, don't I, do I, don't I? But I think when you've just given yourself some space to think about some of these things, sometimes those really big decisions, they become a lot easier, even when there's a really big, you know, potentially risky pivot involved. Like, you stand by the decision much more because you've put the thought into understanding, is it right or not? And you're doing it from a place of, I understand myself, but I'm basing it on my understanding of myself, not just what the market's telling me to do.
Yeah, because it's not a knee-jerk reaction. It is confidence in your own decision making, because you know you're doing it aligned with yourself. And it's so funny you say that, because I had this exact conversation with someone last week. They were weighing up. It's not why we were working together. It just sort of happened, where they were weighing up two opportunities, and I said to them, I said, the thing is, you can't 100% know which is the right decision, as in like what the outcome is going to be, because you're not in control of that. What you're in control of is making the right decision for you, aligned with who you are and what you need. And it just reframes it, because then you know that you've got that more confident decision making going in. It just makes it easier. So I think that's a great point that you make there. But you know, I could talk about this for so long, because it is a never-ending topic, you know, and there are times when, you know, you learn things about yourself and you go, oh, that's why I struggled here, or that's why I did really well there. That's when I am in flow, if we talk about a coaching term, and it's why I feel stuck or frustrated. So, you know, just a parting thought from me on this is just like, you know, learning more about yourself is never a wasted effort, and it is available to all of us. There are different ways of means of doing it. But again, knowing yourself well and what's going to work from you and what's going to make it stick it's powerful stuff. Really powerful
Totally
stuff.
I mean, I'll use even in the last like couple of weeks, I think I've shared with you, like, there's been a few challenges, let's say, in my business. And you know, actually kind of there were a few things just like, you know, stuck in my head. What am I doing next? And just taking that time out for myself to really kind of unpick it. You know, couldn't really pinpoint why am I feeling this way. You know, it wasn't that obvious, but I think just giving yourself that bit of time to really understand, like, why is it I've got this sense, this feeling, you know, of like not necessarily stuckness, but kind of, it's like, and actually like just bringing it back to really understanding what's going on. And you know, it didn't take me really long to do it, but it did take me taking myself away from the everyday in the thick of it, to just give myself a bit of time just to sit down with it and go, right, what's actually going on right here, you know, why am I feeling this way, and what do I need to do to kind of work through it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. And you know, and that's the thing, it gives you the resilience, doesn't it? Because as long as you're in touch with who you are and how you're going to navigate something, all of a sudden these challenges become smaller bumps in the road,
Yeah,
like
totally.
than they are big ones.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
as always, such a pleasure to talk with you, Donna.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. It's a real pleasure to have you here, and please, you know, get in touch. Let us know what's resonating for you.
Yeah, please do. Right, see you all next time. Take care.
Take care.
See you later. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Procurement Pivots. We hope today's episode gave you actionable tips to help you to continue to move forward in your procurement career.
If you enjoyed the conversation, follow our episodes, share them with others, and please support us on our social media channels for others that might be interested to tune in.